I've never heard of a speaker, even at that $20,000, $30,000 range, who isn't flexible with their rate. I've heard of $20,000 speakers working for free if it's at that perfect audience. They know they can bring people into their ecosystem like that. So if you are just wanting that, I want to get paid $5,000 for a keynote, that market's saturated. A lot of people want that. You've got to be a bit more creative in how are you going to approach the dollar figure question.
Welcome to Be Bold Branding, where we discuss the power of differentiating yourself through your own unique story and standout personal brand.
What if the difference between speaking occasionally and speaking consistently isn't your talent on stage, but your booking system behind the scenes? Today, we're exploring the hidden world of speaker pipeline development with Cam Beaudoin, founder of The Frequent Speaker, who helps leaders land stages most people don't even know exist. While talented speakers stay stuck waiting for referrals or hoping the right person sees their content, Cam has built a booking agency that creates consistent opportunities for authors, coaches, and entrepreneurs to grow both their brand and bottom line. Join us as we explore how mission-driven experts can scale their speaking careers by building systems that work 24/7, landing them on stages that truly grow their influence and income.
Cam, welcome to Be Bold Branding.
Thanks so much. I love that intro. It's so great. Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone, and thanks for listening.
You bet.
So, Cam, give us a little bit of a background on you. What, a little bit of how you grew up and what landed you to be in the speaker business, and then more importantly, led you to booking and teaching how people can get on these shows very frequently.
Sure. Well, I've got this story, and isn't it funny sometimes of how you really only complete the story when you look back at your history, right? You know what I mean? Like you look back and you say, I remember this one time my dad used to sell new skin and like multi-level marketing kind of stuff. And you know who comes on cassette tapes on multi-level marketing? Tony Robbins. Mm-hmm. And so like I remember listening to cassette tapes of Tony Robbins while growing up. And I didn't really put one and one together, but I was always reading those like self-help books and stuff like that. And guess what? Every single person there, they all speak on stage. They're all kind of like a part of that. So I think in the back of my mind, that was slowly working towards, me getting up on stage myself and speaking, because I was a speaker. When I worked at IBM in my early 30s, I was a speaker on disability inclusion and accessibility. So I would go out on behalf of IBM to coach, to train, to educate, to bring in clients on behalf of IBM. And they would send me off to these big conferences just to speak because I had clout, right? Like because I had the big IBM name behind, we've got a speaker from IBM coming here and he's going to go speak about accessibility. I don't know what that is, but it's IBM. So we got to have him on our stage. So I would be able to go and speak on stage about that. And it really helped to loosen me up to get out and just get really comfortable with speaking. So middle of the pandemic, I took a course on professional speaking because I wanted to eliminate ums and ers and uhs from my vocabulary. I thought it was such a negative to me going and speaking. And so, and that's really what got me hooked, because the coach I hired, turns out he wasn't helping at all with ums and uhs. It was just about, well, Cam, the problem is you just haven't done enough. You just haven't had enough reps up on stage yet to remove that vernacular. So you got to get up more. You got to go do more outreach. You got to get on more stages, and you'll see over time, naturally, it kind of goes away. I'm sure you guys noticed that with podcasting too. The better guests either have podcasts or have spoken a lot before, and there's just less of that kind of goes on. So I spoke on stages on behalf of IBM and other companies for about 7 years. And when I went off on my own to do public speaking on my own, I just saw such a big need and demand in the industry that there wasn't enough marketing knowledge around speaking, because a lot of speakers, they do it as a hobby. They do it as a side gig. They do it as kind of like a thing they just kind of, fall into sometimes. Whereas if you treat it like a business, things just fall in place and you'll get gigs and you'll be able to grow your business and grow your authority. It's a wonderful way to grow your authority. When everyone's looking at you, you get authority naturally. So great for social media, great for like authors to go and promote their books. So many benefits to it. So there's a little bit about me.
That's cool.
I love it.
Yeah, we do believe in that so much. And that's the reason we lead in with that question, is because we found out in our own lives, obviously, and then working with so many clients, we the things that we experience coming up, like you said, might not even come to fruition until you look back and you're like, oh, look at that. It was just like, I was made for it and I didn't even know it, type of thing. And so many people run into that. Really interesting that you figured out what we know is to be the truth too. And we talk about it all the time. Like, one of the things that needs to happen for anybody to grow their business is not always the self work of, I just got to make the pitch perfect. I just got to, if I only said this word, they would have bought, or something like. And when so many times it's building the pipeline, right? So many times it's getting in front of enough people to say yes, rather than saying the perfect words to get a yes. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. And I think that so many entrepreneurs let's take a step back for a moment, because a lot of speakers don't even realize they're entrepreneurs. I'm sure you see that as well in people who, I'm just starting off with this, or maybe they're like an ex-CEO, and you've got to realize you're starting a business, and the business of speaking is exactly that. Same principles apply. You need to have an offer. You need to go and get leads. You need to go and figure out what your ideal client profile is. You got to do all this kind of work. This is all stuff that you got to do, because if you don't know who you're pitching to, then you don't know what messaging and all that other kind of good stuff is involved in that. But I see it so often that people think that just because, they've got a good idea, that they can go out and then people will just be naturally gravitate towards them and hire them for $10, $15, $20,000 speaking events. And it's just not true. More action, just get up and do more, just kind of create more opportunities for yourself. And that's going to do so much more for everything else. You mentioned about refining your pitch. And I think that you can only really refine your pitch if you actually do a pitch to somebody else, right? You can sit there and it's really easy to sit and say, this isn't perfect, and the text box isn't perfectly aligned with the rest of my screen. It's yeah, all that matters. But really, getting in front of people and doing a pitch is going to do so much more for your business than refining and perfecting and making it optimal and ideal. So yeah, just getting out there and doing is more important than anything else.
Yeah. It sure
done is better than perfect. We say
that.
Yes.
I almost got that tattooed on my arm at this point now. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So, of course, we work with a lot of speakers as well. And one of the things they consistently tell us is, I don't even know where to begin to find the stages. So if you're somebody who's looking to start that business of speaking, where do you start?
Well, start with where you currently are. So I'll give you an example. I worked with a speaker once, and she worked in a musical instrument manufacturing company. Okay, got that. Okay, but she was in HR, and she said, I want to go teach HR people about, I don't remember what her main topic was, but I said, wait, hold on. You already work in a niche, right? It's not just manufacturing, it's manufacturing of musical instruments. It's not just any musical instruments. It was string instruments. So she worked a niche within a niche within a niche. So I said, why don't you just become the speaker for HR within that? Go become an expert in speaking to anybody about how the intricacies of musical instruments, you think manufacturing of the strings must be in Mexico, and the body of the okay, I'm not a violinist, so the body of the violin, maybe it's made in China or somewhere in the US where some high quality craftsmen are crafting the viola or something like that. They're doing all this work. And so what if you just became the expert? And I said, do you think that maybe if you became the expert at HR people for this, that maybe other manufacturing companies, one level up from that target audience, might be interested in hearing you speak? And she says, oh yeah. And then once you get really good at that, maybe, Steinway, or maybe Accord, or some of the other, maybe the other, organizations around musical instruments, maybe they would want to hear from you as well, because you've got deep knowledge about this one very specific topic. And she's like, oh my God, yeah. And that was where she began her speaking career. And I think it's so easy to say, I like AI and I'm learning a bunch of stuff on AI right now, so why don't I go and speak about AI? Start where you are and go deep into that topic, and then become an expert in that, because it's always easier to hire an expert and pay an expert than it is a generalist. So you don't want a little bit of knowledge about everything. You want deep knowledge on one topic. Then it becomes just how many outreaches are you doing? I'm sure we can get into that in a moment, but always start where you are.
Yeah, I love that. And that makes total sense to us as branding people because it's a struggle sometimes to get people to really niche down, right?
Right.
But that just means you become more special to the people that you're serving, which means you can charge a specialist rate. Let's just face it. And speaking of rates, so here's a big question we have as well. There are different strategies for speaking, of course. There's a strategy where you'll go and speak free because it's in front of an absolute ideal audience, and you have the ability to do back of the room sales, whether it be books or programs or whatever that you have. And then there's the paid speaking. What do you think is the best scenario? Kind of a hybrid approach, or how would you approach that if you're, let's say, not just starting out, because most of our audience is they're going to be pretty seasoned speakers, but still speakers that really want to land those consistently, the frequent, right? For the frequent speakers. So talk to me a little bit about what approach seems to work best.
So what I've seen in the marketplace now is, first off, if you've got some clout, and clout can be anything. You've been a VP at an organization and you have some experience there. Maybe maybe you've done a lot of, like you've done a TED Talk or something like that. Your base fee is $5,000. Stop. Like, don't think about, there's no scaling up. There's no laddering up to that. Just start at 5K. That's your starting point. And it's good is if it feels a bit uncomfortable, that probably means you're in the right space, right? Because we don't value ourselves, especially as speakers, the same way that you would sell, like a phone or something like that, right? Because this is a product, I can hold it. Because when you get rejected as a speaker, you get doubly rejected, right? You get rejected personally and professionally, right? Like, I don't want you or the content that you have. It's really hard to say. Like, you feel it inside as a speaker, so it's really tough. Coaches, I hear you. You're in the same bucket. I know what you mean. But so start at 5K. That's your baseline. But I want to do another caveat here. I've never heard of a speaker, even at that $20,000, $30,000 range, who isn't flexible with their rate. I've heard of $20,000 speakers working for free if it's at that perfect audience. They know they can bring people into their ecosystem like that. So if you are just wanting that, I want to get paid $5,000 for a keynote, that market's saturated. A lot of people want that. You've got to be a bit more creative in how are you going to approach the dollar figure question. So let me continue with that. So maybe you're at $5,000. How can you expand that? How can you go even more? Well, can you go into organizations? Can you go into a big corporation and say, well, I'll do a keynote for your quarterly sales event, but how about I do a virtual event every quarter after this for the next year, and we'll do $2,000 up front for this keynote. We'll do $1,000 on for every quarter after this. That's a $5,000 paycheck, right? But I need all the money up front. I agree to all this kind of stuff. So there's ways that you can work that in. Selling from the back of the room now, I am going to say that many conferences now have a hard stop. They're like, you're not allowed to sell from stage. Okay, well, now you got to get creative. What about that QR code that comes up at the last slide? Is it just going to your LinkedIn page? No. Don't do that. Send them to something where people can follow up with you. Because if you've made an impression, if you've given value to an audience, then they want to keep working with you. That's the big thing. They want to keep following up with you and continue down that journey. So create opportunities for yourself. And there's many, many, many different ways. So I think that the hybrid approach works really well. You get paid a little bit up front, right? So everyone has skin in the game. And then after that, you can get something on the back end, either through coaching program or, whatever SaaS product or whatever else you have. I know I work with a lot of tech people, then they end up having a SaaS or like a software service in the back end.
Like what you're hearing? Hit that subscribe button and learn how you can change how you're seen and charge what you're worth.
Great advice.
Oh, yeah.
Really great advice.
Yeah.
I really like that idea too, especially getting started, of offering that more value add. Yeah, your budget may only be here for this, but here's my speaking fee, but I can do all of this other stuff for you.
Right.
To follow that up, right? And then it's not just a one and done situation. Which is great, because I'm sure in speaking, right, there are people who go back to many times to the same clients and speak again and again and again and again. Maybe it's a different conference. I know in real estate it's like that a lot. Obviously, I was just
about to say real estate associations, especially blue collar. I've got a story about that in a moment. And schooling, education, they are so they're so deprived of good speakers. And see, I'll start with schools because that's a really funny one. But once you're in with a university network or like a school network, like a group of principals, or just put yourself, you go to the state education board, right? You go to the government level and you introduce yourself, you speak there, some principals or some district schools, what are they called? The regional, not educators, but the people there, like, who handle like a group of schools. All of a sudden, you're able to go to every single school in that district and go and speak if you just know like one, if you land one gig. Once you're in with education, you're kind of in. And I know a lot of speakers who just end up sticking with education because it's so lucrative once you're in. Now, you got to do volume. Like we're not talking about, you're not going to your local middle school and getting tens of thousands of dollars to go speak to a group of 6 to 13-year-olds. That's not what I'm trying to say. But you'll do so many of them. And so one opportunity, you go to Nebraska and you talk to 12 schools in a region, well, all of a sudden you're getting $12,000 for a 5-day trip. Mm-hmm. Is that worth your time? Like, I don't know. Like, but if that's who you want to cater to, if your target audience are, I'm working with one speaker right now and he has an autistic son, okay, who just became verbal after 16 years. Really fascinating story. So he wants to go and teach educators, how do you interact with students who have autism? And sometimes the government level programs don't really fill the gaps. Like, there's like, what do I say? I don't have any other students with autism. And he goes and fills that gap because he and his son go speak together. Like, imagine that. Such a cool program. Awesome. But once he's in, then he can go and talk to all the districts, like the whole district all around, and they're just going to get referrals, and that kind of multiplies itself. So that's a really interesting one. I want to come back to associations for a moment. I know a speaker who's $1 million speaker per year. He talks to blue collar workers. Okay. There's a niche for everything. Blue collar workers about on Friday nights, don't go drinking with the boys on the construction site. Go home, tell your wife you appreciate her, give your kids a kiss before bed, and then go out. Like, that's his whole thing. His whole thing is just about reminding the Iowa Plumbers Association, the Roofers Association of Nebraska. Like he goes and talks to blue collar workers about that, and he's $1 million speaker just because they bring him in again and again every year. He's got a workshop, 5K, 10K, 15K. You got a breakout room available? Oh, did somebody cancel? Let's call him up because he's available. He always is. And he'll fly down, call another association, say, hey, I'm in town. You got another gig for me? Great, I got a gig. We have a meetup coming up in 2 days. Perfect. So I'll go speak at one event. I'll go speak at a different event. And he's $1 million speaker as a result of that. Just about being creative.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Like I don't want to say simple, but like steps that are thought out that is blind, most of us are blind to, right? You've got some really good takeaways here, which we're going to go over, like 3 takeaways with our guests, a lot of times, and you've got several here. So really good stuff. What about this? Like, how about what's the best platform to access or to find speaking opportunities, like to even start the process? What's your advice there?
Well, first off, looking at your own network is going to be the most important, right? Because the Google logo is a Google logo, right? How do you, and I always laugh at this because, I know a lot of speakers and they say, oh, I'll never go and speak for free anymore. And I'm like, if Amazon called you up and said, we'd like you to do a lunch and learn, are you going to turn them down? It's like, like you're going to do it. Like, come on. Like, and so what I say is that, in your LinkedIn, you're going to have a ton of followers, even if it's 300, that's still a ton of people that, like, you're not going to be able to contact 300 people on an afternoon. That's going to be a lot of calls and emails to follow up with. So again, going back to knowing who you currently know, go follow up with them and say, hey, I'm looking to go and speak on food waste, right? Like I see that I've got a regional manager of a McDonald's franchise. Can I go and talk to you guys about food waste? Wouldn't that look great on your website if you had the McDonald's logo on there? Like, they don't really, nobody knows outside that you've been paid or not paid. You're just looking for a logo, right?
For sure.
Yeah. And then the value that you get from that, because maybe you'll learn through reps by going to speak at the McDonald's and, Popeyes or whoever else, you go speak at a bunch of fast food joints and say, wow, maybe I can then become the food waste expert for fast food chains around America. Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea how many fast food joints there are in North America? Millions. And imagine becoming the expert of that. So start where you are right now and just go and tap into your network. Start there and go give free lunch and learns. And again, that word free, nobody likes to say it, but a logo is a good exchange, especially if you're just starting out.
I couldn't agree with you more, Cam. I got 2 things to add to this that go right along with it in life experience. First off, I'm an auctioneer by trade. I have been for 32 years. And that's how we did it. Like nobody's just going to hand you a microphone. And even if they did, you don't know what you're doing, right? You got to get up at the end of the sale when nobody's listening, and you got to make the mistakes, and you got to put up with them laughing at you because they're going to, type of thing, and then, but then next thing you know, your mentors, you're finishing his lane, right? You're finishing, and then now you're getting a couple of sellers that know you, and then they're like, "Hey, you did a good job for me last week. I told you, mentor, let you sell them this week," and then and reputation starts building. And then the second thing to that I agree with you 100% about working for free type of a thing is, I'm going to use Darius Rucker, right? Yeah, I knew him as Hootie of the Blowfish. Is he Hootie? Is he Darius? Is he Hootie? I don't care as long as he's singing, right? And I have seen him a dozen times. I've seen him play in front of 50,000 people, and I have seen him play in front of 1,000 people. And it was the same performance. That dude was doing it because that's what he does. And he is amazing, right? And we have to look at our craft like that too. Like, if you're going to be a speaker and speak because you need to speak, not because there's 10,000 people or there's 2 people. Wouldn't you agree? And then you get that experience that leads to those others. But I mean, you take him as an example. Just because you played in front of 50,000 people doesn't mean you're not going to book a gig and only 1,000 people show up. I've seen it happen. And you still need to deliver what it is that you do because it's from the heart, because this is what you do.
Yeah, exactly. And I tend to compare speakers with performers in general, right? Like, we've all heard of those stories of comedians. When you practice your bit, like, you can go and watch star A caliber comedians on the Monday night newbie nights, maybe not the newbie nights, but like on the Wednesday night, right? Because they're testing new material. But that doesn't mean they're bad. They may not get as many laughs. They're like, okay, I'm learning right now. Like these are my reps. These are my reps. And the A-list comedians, before they go on a world tour,
Great point.
Do you think they're just like day one of the new, let me test a bunch of new material here, let me just go do that? It's not how it works.
Right.
Yeah. We were talking pre-show about some I saw Linkin Park on Friday, and I was watching this band. I'm like, they're doing a world tour, and by like brief, what are they going to do? 50, 60, 100, 200? Are they doing 200 shows? Like that, like, do you think they get bored of it? I'm sure they get bored of their music. Like, how could you not? But that's the reputation that you need to have. I show up, I do the best I can. Doesn't matter if it's 2 or 1,000. Like, you got to show up with your best, because that's like it will create opportunities that you don't know. Because imagine you get one good person in the audience of 10. It's like, man, you rocked it there. I got to come speak with the speaker afterwards. You changed my life. Now I'm going to go bring you into my company, right? Like, let me go there's your $25,000 gig.
And there you go. Yeah. I had my old mentor used to say, you never know who's listening.
Right.
You
Exactly.
better be on your
that.
A game. You never know who's listening.
That's so true.
Yeah.
We're going to segue right now into our takeaways from this conversation with Cam. And then, Cam, we're going to circle back around to you so you can tell everybody how they can learn more. But takeaway number 1 is a hybrid approach works well. In other words, make it a full experience, not a one and done. If you're going to go speak to somebody one time, say, hey, what if I do this too? And pull it all together over a longer time period. You may even get more money, but you'll probably most definitely get the money you're after in the first place. So that hybrid approach is great.
Yep. Get creative with your approach. I like that. 1,000 examples of how that can happen, but get creative about how you're approaching your opportunity.
And takeaway number 3, compare your audience. I love how you put this, by the way, to the number of emails and phone calls you'd have to do if you were doing those one by one. First time I'd actually ever heard it put like that.
Advice.
If you're in front of, let's say, 45 people on a Zoom call and you're doing a virtual presentation, that takes the place in 30 minutes, 45 minutes of 30 to 40 45 phone calls that you would have to make or emails you'd have to send. Huge difference, guys. Plus, they get to actually see you, see your personality, hear your wisdom, and it makes a huge difference. So, Cam, tell everybody how they can learn more.
The best place to go right now, thefrequentspeaker.com/brandface. I've got some helpful information there. Okay. So I've got, sample cold emails, if that is what we didn't even get into cold emails at all, but that's a big part of speaking. Very normal for speakers to go and do outreach to event planners, to people that you've never met before. So I've got some sample emails there as well that you can go and take, just some templates useful for anyone. Also some scripts on how to handle like a cold call email. Cold call conversation. It's a lot different when you don't know somebody and you got to have a conversation with them. And also, what else have I got up on there? So I've got pricing guides as well. So in case you need to ladder up to that point or like figure out what your pricing is, I've just got some ideas on how you should price yourself depending on what it is. So thefrequentspeaker.com/BrandFace. I've got all my info there.
That's awesome, Cam.
Great resources.
And hey, we need to look at having you come back again, and we'll continue this conversation with some more great content for those listeners out there that want to be a frequent speaker. We encourage everybody to check out Cam, and we'll have the links in the show notes.
Thank you so much, Cam. It's been such a pleasure, and we can't wait to have you back.
Great. Thanks for having me on. It's been fantastic.
Ready to change how you're seen and charge what you're worth? If you're not getting enough opportunities to meet with ideal customers, or the prospects you're meeting with just aren't ideal, it's most likely your brand that's holding you back. So if you're a coach, consultant, or expert who is on the rise, you need our ultimate guide to a freedom-based brand. Download it free now at brandfaceguide.com.